All right, let's go into a little more of the nuts and bolts of hiring and firing employees. There are a set of documents that you need to have ready. All this content's on Docstoc. You need to have your job descriptions that you can put online. In some cases, you need a job application. We don't use a job application for anything, although we do get a background check on every single employee we hire. I think that's really important. I would strongly recommend it. You'll need to get a consent form to do it. You can't just run a background check on somebody without their consent. But if they give you their permission, and almost always a candidate will when they're applying for a job, you want to do a basic criminal check to see if there's anything weird or strange in their past, what's going on there. You want to have an offer letter that's a non-binding but written statement of what are the terms of the job, what you're offering. Somebody can accept that offer letter. Then you give them an employment agreement, which states here the terms of the employment. In the employment agreement, you have things like the confidentiality agreement. Anything that they create, any IP that they create while working for you is property of the company, not their own personal property. And then a really important document is if you have to terminate an employee, you typically want to get a release of claims, which is just saying that you as an employer are agreeing not to sue the company. To do this, you typically have to offer some kind of consideration, and that may just be any benefit. It may even be helping them with a new job. But what's really important is to make sure for any employee that's no longer with your company, you have a release saying, that person certifies that they're not going to take any legal action against the company. And it's just basic business housekeeping you want to take care of. You'll need a solid contractor agreement, which anytime you work with somebody that's a non-employee, you'll need. And then once you have a group of probably, I'd say, 5 or more employees, you want to get an employee handbook in place that talks about all the employee practices. Let's talk about employees versus contractors. The main difference between an employee versus contractor, quite simply, is a contractor, you pay a set fee, you don't have to deal with taking anything out of their taxes, and employees at your direction and control. A lot of times the question will be, well, is somebody really a contractor or is somebody really an employee? The simple rule of thumb is if they work at your direction and control and with your resources, they should be your employee. And so there's lots of rules stated on this. There's a document that kind of gives you a long checklist. If things like, are they working in your office? Are they using your computer or their own materials? Are they working under constant supervision from you and at your direction or control? Are they determining how they're working? It's easier to work with contractors because it's less upfront issues. A lot of times there's a temptation to want to do that, but what's important is that you understand the proper classification of an employee versus a contractor. And most notably with things like employees, state law will require that if it's a part-time employee, that you pay certain overtime rates after a certain amount of time and things like that. Let's go over some additional information. In the state of California, interns are actually required to be paid if they're providing a marketable service. You can offer unpaid internships if they're getting college credit or if they're getting mentorship or training in the process. When you hire employees, you have to classify them as exempt versus non-exempt. A non-exempt employee is someone that is typically more at an entry level or is below a manager status. And so they're doing maybe more of a task-oriented function, and they need to get paid not on an annualized salary basis, but they need to get paid per each hour. What's important there is then if they go over the set hours per day, you're responsible to pay them overtime. Versus an exempt employee, that's someone that may be a VP or a manager or a C-level employee that you can say, look, your salary is $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 a year. You just got to do whatever it takes to get the job done. In many cases, they may be working 60, 70, 80 hours. Clearly, like everyone that works in investment banking is not getting paid overtime hours. So those are the most notable examples of exempt positions. In the tech industry, a lot of positions are exempt positions too. There's a set of rules for required break times. If you have a non-exempt employee, it's required that they get a half-hour lunch break and then 2 15-minute breaks throughout the day. And then rules for overtime. The big thing to know with firing is that California is an at-will state, as many states are, which means the employee's there at their own choice, and the employer provides the employment at their own choice. There's not a contract. If you decide to terminate their employment, you can for no reason at all, and the employee can leave at any time, right? They're not locked into having to work with the company. But even in an at-will employment situation, it's still very tricky and dicey, and employees may come to you for any number of reasons, including any kind of discrimination claim. They may say that they were unfairly terminated, unfairly treated, and then you could be subject to a lawsuit. So the key thing that you want to do is, if you think you're going to get to the point of terminating an employee, you want to be making sure to be giving them feedback of, hey, here were things that I expected. You want to have that documented. You want to explain what's going on so that you have a record of conversations that you've had, of performance evaluations, and wherever possible, you want the termination to be for failure to perform at the level that was clearly communicated.